welcome to Rotted Reviews, and today I want to talk about a movie that I've honestly been kind of wanting to watch for a little while now, but it kind of proved to be a little bit difficult to find. I've heard some folks talk about this particular Christmas horror movie that I could not find anywhere online, but I did manage to track down a DVD copy, and today I'd like to talk about Christmas with the Dead, the 2012 movie directed by T.L. Langford and written by Joe R. Lansdale, who you might recognize as the writer of Bubba Hotep, as well as screenplay by Keith Lansdale. So the reason I wanted to cover this one was because I'm always on the lookout for the next Christmas horror gem, especially something that is kind of that hidden gem quality, that kind of thing that other people might have difficulty finding, or something that may have just gone under the radar, just waiting for somebody to pounce on it and talk about it and maybe get it into the limelight. And that was kind of the consistent thing that I kept hearing about this one from some folks, was this does have that kind of hidden gem quality. So I went ahead and bought the DVD. I went ahead and gave it a watch. Let's find out if it lives up to the hype. So the basic premise behind this movie is we have the character of Calvin, played by Damien Maffei, who is with his family on Christmas Eve. He's basically wanting to just kind of crash out on the couch while his wife is wanting him to finish the exterior decorations. The lights haven't been put up yet. Inside is nice, you know, it's Christmassy and so forth, but man, he just is beat. He wants to take a nap. And things start to kind of go haywire when a Technicolor lightning storm starts happening outside, but he misses it because his face is planted in the couch cushions, but his wife and his little daughter do catch it. And unfortunately, that causes them to collapse to the ground, along with everybody else in the world that caught the lightning storm, only to rise shortly after as flesh-eating zombies. And apparently, you know, kind of following the zombie lore of whoever they bite is then infected from there. So it's a zombie story caused by colorful lightning. Now, most zombie movies would kind of take this as their launching point for surviving the night, making difficult decisions as far as, you know, how to survive and so on. And this one kind of takes a little bit of a different avenue, because it's not too long before we kind of fast forward 6 months, and it's June now, and Calvin is surviving. He doesn't want to give up his wife and, you know, so forth. So there's hope on the horizon, and in that hope, he keeps them chained and feeds them dog food and so forth, just trying to keep the zombies, at the very least, alive, in case something were to miraculously come down in terms of a cure, or maybe a different lightning storm that got everybody back to normal. So he's treating the zombie apocalypse not only with a sense of perseverance, but also preservation. He's not killing his neighbors. He's doing everything in his power not to do that. You know, if he can just take a cricket bat and shove them out of the way so that he can continue on with his business of siphoning gas or collecting canned goods, all the better. And meanwhile, he built a fence around his house, and he's just trying to live his life. So ultimately, things kind of do start to get complicated when he runs into another survivor, and then he runs into more survivors, and then things kind of turn into a religious cult and so forth that he's trying to survive from there. You know, fear the dead, survive the living, whatever you want to, blah, 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 blah. So he's basically at that point faced with the kind of moral and ethical and heart-wrenching decisions of how much to latch onto and try to keep alive and how much to let go. And in that, there's kind of the Christmassy theme. So that aspect of his wife wanting him to put out the exterior decorations kind of comes into play when he's faced with decisions about possibly having a Christmas in June to try and make up for past sins. So the Christmas aspect of this is not in the background. It very much is front and center. It's how the movie starts out. It's one of the central themes that keeps the plot and the motivation going for the character of Calvin. It's a core element. So how well did this movie do? How much of a hidden gem is Christmas with the Dead? I would have to say kind of middle of the road, in all honesty. This was a low budget production, and it really did feel like it. And there were some aspects of it that really did work for me, and also some that just didn't. Fortunately, the thing that did work for me was Calvin and one of the survivors that he ran into earlier on. It was GM, played by Brad Mull. And the character dynamic and the relationship between those two did work. I liked that. There was a lot of good buddy banter going on there. Started out a bit rough, But once they actually kind of, started putting their guns down and talking to one another, the movie kind of really picked up from there, and it was a big benefit to it. So, having core central characters drive the movie that I did enjoy and I was latched onto, that's a big win. When it started to kind of drift into everybody getting captured and fearing the living and the religious cult and so forth, I think the movie kind of stalled out a lot with its own messaging.
I'm a bunny. I can see that.
And although it did kind of pick up in terms of the zombie apocalypse and having good kills and multiple kills and so on and so forth, it worked on that kind of scratching that zombie itch that a lot of us, might have as far as a lot of, gory, interesting kills. But from a storyline, from a character perspective, it took everything that was kind of building up and pushed the pause button on it for the sake of having this conflict happen. And it went on so long, it really did feel like a movie stall out. And in that low budget kind of aspect of this film, there is that, it really depends on how you want to look at it. It's the kind of thing that can be really endearing, or it can be really cheesy, or, possibly even bad to some folks. But it really did kind of shriek of, getting your friends and your neighbors and so forth and splattering them with makeup effects and blood and so on, and having them shamble around as zombies and just having fun, as opposed to a high budget production with some really good practical effects and some CG for cleanup, that kind of thing. This really did feel more like, hey, Bill, go grab Susan. We're going to have, a little weekend barbecue thing. We're going to splatter some blood on you and have you for a while. It'll be a great time. And that's kind of the vibe that I got from a lot of the zombie elements of this, which again, can be endearing to a lot of folks, especially if you're looking for the kind of, indie horror, small budget kind of productions that really do drive that sense of fun and merriment and heart in a lot of ways. But for those of you actually looking for some high quality zombie effects and so on, this probably won't stack up too well. I know I've mentioned A Cadaver Christmas so many times since I've seen it, and it has turned into an annual watch for me. And that kind of is my bar at this point for a low budget, shambling zombie, cheesy, Christmassy movie with just tons and tons of heart. And I would have to say that Christmas with the Dead kind of does wind up in that same family. There's a lot of aspects of it that are very similar. So although I have to admit, I'm very glad that I bought Christmas with the Dead and I did enjoy it. And yes, I do recommend it. At the same time, I also have to admit that while A Cadaver Christmas is an annual watch for me, I don't think that's really going to be the case with this one. The heart that it brought to the table did shine through. The Christmassy aspect of it did put sugar plums in my head. There's a lot about this movie that does work, but it really is a little bit rough around the edges. The low budget does come through pretty harshly, and that portion with the religious cult in the last third of the movie did stall things out pretty hard. So altogether, I would have to wind up saying that this is an above average, very small production that I do recommend. So if you can find yourself a copy of Christmas with the Dead, I do recommend checking it out. So thank you very much for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you on my next review. Remember, next time you want to watch a Christmas horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.